Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me again tonight for our third and final Conversations with Authors event this summer with the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library and St. Johns County Public Library System. My name is Ann Crawford. I'm the Assistant Branch Manager and Adult Services Librarian at the Ponte Vedra Library. And this summer, I have had the privilege of interviewing New York Times bestselling authors who are out with brand new books that we're all really excited to read. They've got wait lists at the library. We're reading each book as part of our Book Lovers Book Club. So in August, we'll be reading The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum for our in-person meeting, as well as our Zoom meeting. And I've already heard comments about what a page turner it was. Someone said they just flew through it in like 7 hours or less. And they're very excited about talking about the book. And that's evidence because I've got all these great questions from our readers to ask our author tonight. Before I dive in and introduce our big star, our grand finale, I wanted to thank the Friends of the Ponte Vedra Beach Branch Library for giving us a paid Zoom account so we could host special events like this one, to the Book Lovers Book Club for their inspiration and their wonderful questions. They always think outside the box, and I think we've managed to surprise our authors with some questions they don't usually get asked. That are still respectful. I do want to say they are still very respectful. And I wanted to thank all of you who are taking the time either to watch live tonight or in the future, because it's always fascinating to find out exactly what an author was thinking when he or she wrote their book, because you have one experience when you read by yourself, you have another experience when you come to a book club and you share in a community, but then you get a even more unique experience when you get a behind the scenes tour of exactly what was going on in the author's mind as they created the story that you get to enjoy. So without further ado, we introduce Brendan Slocum of the Violin Conspiracy. Yay!
Hey, everybody.
So glad to have you here tonight, Brendan. Thank you so much for joining us. I thought maybe you could start off tonight's event by telling us a little bit about who you are, where you live, a little bit about yourself.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me here. It is an honor to be here, and I'm pleased as punch to be able to be with you guys tonight. So thank you so much. I'm in fantastic company. I know the authors that you guys have had the last couple of days, so I feel very, very privileged to be in the same league. So thank you. Brendan Slocum. I am from Yuba City, California, but I was raised in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I started playing violin when I was 9 years old through a public school music program. Went to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. I majored in violin and viola. I've been a public school teacher for 25 years. I'm teaching privately now. Since the book has come out, I've not been doing as much teaching or playing as I would like. You know, that kind of goes hand in hand. I'm working on it. I still need to practice. You can look at my nails, see how long they are. I really need to practice. What else? I'm a nice guy. I love books. I love comic books. I am an avid comic book fan. My TBR comic book pile is huge. I've been collecting since I was 15 years old, and I'm significantly older than 15. And you can see that's my collection in my office.
Wow.
And it's backed up back there, and more action figures and posters and all of that good stuff. And everything is, it's just, this is my haven. So I like to write in here. Violin Conspiracies, my first book. I live in Washington, D.C. I wanted to set the book in an area that I knew really well. So it's in North Carolina, having been raised and gone to school in North Carolina. Violin Conspiracies set there. And I just am so thankful and so honored at the reception that the book has gotten. It's amazing. It has surpassed all of my expectations, all of my wildest dreams. It's incredible. And I want to thank people like you guys for that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The library is a great way for a book to get out there to the general public, and people are always looking for new readers and new insights and new points of view. And the Violin Conspiracy does not disappoint on any level. And like I said, I think it was a really enjoyable read for our book club. I know they're excited to talk about it in August. It's got a big wait list. I'm just waiting to hear the good news that someone's going to pick it up for some sort of adaptation and then doesn't butcher it. That's all. I'm like simultaneously excited when it gets adapted and then terrified because I'm like, don't ruin the story. But it is such an impactful
so
story.
funny about that. I will say, and that but I guess I can go ahead and tell you this. Violin Conspiracy has actually been optioned by Sony. And there is I've gotten numerous emails that a screenplay is being finished up right now, and they're going to be shopping it to Netflix and HBO and everyone else, everywhere else. And they have assured me that whomever plays the lead, Ray, of course, it should be me, but I'm a little bit too old. They've assured me that whomever it is will begin, once they get cast, they will start lessons immediately. So it's going to be as authentic as possible. They have guaranteed me that it will not be a butchering of the story. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I certainly hope not. And I certainly hope they give you a proper voice in the production and
so
feedback to the characters and keeping it real, and don't be so hard on yourself about being too old. I mean, look at 90210 from my generation. I mean, how many of those kids were in their 30s playing teenagers?
All
Anybody
of them
could do it.
yeah.
But I'm really excited to hear that. So that is really awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The first question that I wanted to ask you tonight, which seems to be perfect because you told us a little bit about your musical background, was what about your musical background influenced this book? What did you take from your musical background and infuse into the story?
That is a fantastic question. I took every single aspect from the feeling that I had when I first picked up my violin, to the feeling when I played at my first gig, my first wedding, to the feeling when I did not do something well at all, when I, did a performance that was absolutely wretched, and, the feeling of a triumphant comeback, and the feeling of loss, and the feeling of just everything. I took every single emotion from everything that I have felt since I was basically 9 years old, that first day that I picked up a violin. It was a life-changing experience, and I felt something. I loved it from that moment. And just all of the emotions, the good and the bad. I had a couple of arguments with, I don't want to say arguments, let's say disagreements with some of my editors, some of the bad things that I wanted to include in the story. They're like, nah, that's probably not going to work. That's people won't believe that really happened. And I'm like, I'm telling you, things like this actually do happen. So if you're going to take the good, you got to take the bad with it. But I really wanted to every single aspect, everything, because you can't get better without those bad experiences. It's not going to make you any better if you just kind of brush them off and ignore them. You got to work through it.
Oh, absolutely. And I was so thrilled that it was such an emotional book in that way, because my mom and I were talking about the book, and I was a music performer for so long, and my mom and dad will, love to tease about the fact that I didn't get any of that from them, because they proudly claim they're tone deaf. They are avid music lovers.
Right.
They are not music performers. And I think at first when my mom picked up the book, she really wanted to read it, and she had the teeniest hesitation of, will I be able to fully immerse myself and engage with the book, not being a music performer? And she shouldn't have worried, because she said, I was a music lover and I felt like I was a music performer. So that was really exciting for me, because it's one thing to try to describe it to someone, but it's another to when you're able to read something and really kind of step into somebody's shoes. That was a really neat connection for the two of us, that, I was a musician and she's a music lover, and both of us could appreciate the book. Was that a deliberate intention on your part, or just a happy accident? I mean, were you thinking about that while you were writing it?
Oh, 100%. In the first few drafts, the early drafts, I'm using a lot of terminology that, to you and I would make perfect sense. There's the staccato section here and the slurring this and the rubato, blah, blah, blah. And I would let someone read it who wasn't a musician, and they would, I don't know what this is. This may as well be a foreign language. I have no idea. It's like, oh, okay. I have to put it in terms for people who aren't necessarily musicians, but who do enjoy music. There's one section, I believe I was talking about a Mozart sonata, where it sounded like Cupid zipping from cloud to cloud. And then, when he slowed it down, they didn't have to zip from cloud to cloud. It sounded like they were just daintily jumping from cloud to cloud. And just a lot of the imagery that I used. And it's, as a performer, a lot of these things we think about as we're playing, and it comes naturally. And I really wanted to pull the reader in to give them a sense of what it's like to be a musician performing, from start to finish. We love what it is that we do, and these are the experiences that we have as we're performing. And I really wanted to pull everybody in. So I'm glad it worked out. I'm hoping it worked out. I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did.
I think it really did, because you said before about how it's such a kind of a transcendental experience, and that it just, it can take you to the highest heights and the lowest depths, just depending on what your experience was that day, or what you're performing, or how you're feeling about it.
Absolutely.
I think about the 14 years that I was a clarinetist, and obviously starting in the 6th grade, it was pretty rough. That poor reed on my clarinet falling on the floor every time. I mean, I was like, I'm never going to get to play, because I could never put the dang thing together. Finally, I went to my private lesson teacher's Pierce, teaching Pierce. I was a college student, and the poor guy took pity on me, goes, "Here, this is how you." I was like, well, thank goodness you did that, because up until that point, I was never going to get to play the clarinet. But yeah, so I mean, that's what I love about that's what I loved about performing, how incredibly immersive it is. And I love that rather than the book making you feel isolated or excluded from the experience, instead it drove to include you in the experience. And I hope that it raised people's appreciation not only for music and music performance, but how very daunting it can be, especially how very daunting your own experience was for yourself. Because I sensed that there was a lot of Ray's experiences came from your experiences.
Yeah.
So was that a part of the reason you decided to make this your first book, because it's write what you know? It was something that you could bring from your own personal experience?
That was some of the best advice I'd ever been given, was to write what you know and to write honestly. I submitted a manuscript a long time ago and it was science fiction. I love science fiction, but I am not a science fiction writer. And I was made painfully aware that I am not a science fiction writer. And, the advice I was given was write what you know music. Okay. Yeah. And I really wanted to put, it was a very cathartic experience, because I got to actually put down experiences that I've had, that in the past, when I've told people, this is what happened, this is what this person said, this is what happened to me. I often get the response, "Oh, you're just exaggerating. Oh, you're making that up. Oh, things like that don't happen. Oh, you probably misunderstood." And for the words of what actually truly took place to be on a page, validated, and for people to see them and say, whoa, things like this really do happen. I mean, I think it was the best move that I could have made. I'd always wanted to write a story involving music, and I did take a lot of my own experiences. I'm like, well, I could write a nice, happy story, or I could write something that I really, really do know about, and it's my own experiences. And I'm glad that that's the route that I took, because I've gotten a lot of people who have identified and said, yes, that has happened to me too. And also people on the other end of the spectrum who say, I never knew things like this happened. I had no idea. And this is such an eye-opening read for me, because, I'm learning so much, not only about music, but what it's like for someone who doesn't look like me in this cutthroat field. So it's the feedback has just been incredible, and I'm glad that that's the route that I took.
I'm just glad it was such a cathartic experience, and that you were able to, feel real. I don't know what the word is. I don't know if it's justification, vindication, feel maybe a little bit of both. And getting there. But just to know that you've had these experiences, they've been validated on the page, other people responded to that. I mean, you kind of created your own Me Too experience here in the musical world.
Yeah.
Because people think they know what the musical world is about. And I'm a musician, and I don't pretend to know all that the musical world is about. So it opened my frame of reference a great deal of the challenges that are out there, challenges that I may not have faced myself, but that are real and valid
Right.
and should be considered.
Mhm.
And
And I'm
they
really
say knowledge is
happy.
power. You can't battle the ills of the world if you don't know first what they are.
Precisely. And I was pleasantly surprised at how receptive people have been to, that just that whole ideal where it's like, huh, I thought it was just A, B, C, and that's how it is. It's the same way for everyone. And this, I think a lot of the instances in the story really they are eye-opening experiences. People literally, one guy told me I was in Dallas doing a book signing, and he said, you know, until I read your author's notes, I didn't believe a word of what was going on in this book. There is no way that things like this could have happened until I read your author's notes, and a lot of it was from your own personal experiences. And I want to apologize to you because I have now changed my way of thinking. I look at things a lot differently now as a result of reading this, and that made me smile. I was really happy to hear that. I'm glad that he got something out of it aside from a good read.
Absolutely. I mean, that's powerful. I mean, it doesn't change the awful things that happen to you, and I'm so sorry for that. But if it changed one person's mind, changed someone's perspective, made them that much more aware and empathetic, that's powerful.
Absolutely.
That's so incredibly powerful. So good for you for getting that out there. And I'm glad that he finally, yeah, exactly. Pat yourself on the back. I'm glad he finally realized, no, you're not just making all this stuff up. It's
Yeah.
coming from a very real place. Would you say there was any one particular incident in the book that you really wanted people to hone in on or take away or make, really make an impression on people? What if you could pick one moment in the book, probably something I'm assuming probably happened in your own life, what would it be?
Wow. Okay, that's a tough one because there are so many. Wow, there's so many things. I don't want to just focus on the bad things that happened, to Ray and slash Brendan in the story, but the instances of discrimination, like the wedding scene. When I wrote that, it was a modified version of what actually happened to me. I was in
Mm.
college, and we played at this lovely young lady's wedding, and her father shooed us out of the church the moment we played the last note. It was get out, and we just didn't know what was going on, and he looked us dead in the eye, and this is the first time I'd ever seen hatred in someone's eyes, and he said, "You ruined my daughter's wedding. Get out,
Oh,
leave." And like, did we play something poorly? Did we play, what was it? And it kind of sunk in what he was referring to, and that has stuck with me, for like 30 years now. And but some of the good things too, like the instance with Bryce at the camp, or the, what is it, the seminar that he's going to, the master class that he's teaching, where he teaches this one kid who has a crappy instrument and he doesn't play that well, and that's the kid who actually gets something out of what it is that he's doing. He's opening a door for him. Things like that, they're just as valid and just as wonderful, and they affect you just as emotionally as the bad things. So there's a good balance there.
there is, and there's such a spectrum of experiences when you're a musician that some of it relates to the music and some of it just it's autobiographical. You hear a piece of music and bam, you're right there back in
Oh yeah.
high school symphonic band, or you hear a piece of music and you remember that really daunting audition that you had that you weren't sure if you were going to make it to the end of. So music has it's just amazing that way.
Mhm.
I always kid with my husband that, I can't remember where I left my keys, but man, a song comes on the radio from the 80s or 90s and I am jamming. I know every single word, you know. I can't tell you what I did last week, but I can sing every word of that song.
I
So
love it. I love it. I absolutely love it.
it is so true. Music is a big deal, and people forget that you don't have to be a performer to
Right.
appreciate music, to value music, to
Mhm.
have it every day in your life. So I'm
100%.
I'm really hoping people catch on to that, especially the ones who are thinking about cutting music programs in school.
Oh,
Don't do
oh,
it.
oh, that hurts.
Oh,
It hurts my heart.
yes, I know. You being a teacher, especially, I'm
Yeah.
sure
Yeah.
it does. So I was really excited to see that your book hit the mainstream with Good Morning America and just got picked up in so many different ways because I was like, this is such a unique voice. I can't think of a book off the top of my head that had a musician at the center of everything and the whole story revolved around that world. So that was so unique.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have some more questions about that a little bit. But
Sure.
one of our questions from our Book Lovers Book Club is they wanted to know, are Jacob and Misha based on real people? They want to know. Uh-oh. I've struck
I
nerve.
they are actually fictional characters. They're conglomerates of certain people. I put maybe 4 or 5 people when I was growing up, the different music stores that I would go to have my instrument repaired or to buy strings or to buy rosin or whatever. You know, there was always that, I don't want to say the cantankerous old guy there who, you know, just fixes everything and is just mean all the time, but he's really a nice guy. It's, you know, Jacob is a mixture of all of those people that I've seen. And Misha, just right off the top of my head, I'm like, you know what, if I was going to New York to test out some violins, I'd want some guy like this too, he looks like he knows exactly what he's doing. And you know, I just made him up, and yeah, he's a fun character. I'm curious to see who's going to play him in the series. That's going to be fun.
So he's a composite of a lot of different people.
Yes.
Was Misha the same way?
Absolutely, 100%.
But sometimes those are some of the most interesting characters, because then you can pull different parts of people that you've known in your life and come up with someone who has all sorts of different facets.
Yeah, I
Really
like to say every single character in the book, everybody knows. Everyone has met these people at some point in their life. Every single person in the book. You know, it's just how people are. And I just wanted a sense of authenticity. This is you, this is what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I mean, you know, that's what makes the book so universal, is when you can relate to a character, even if maybe you can't relate to the situation, but you're like, I know that personality. I've run up against that
Yeah.
before. So I found that really intriguing that one of our readers wanted to know if Jacob and Misha were real.
Misha
And
will
the
have the
same
ponytail in the series. He totally will.
the same reader wanted to know if you have personal experiences with your instruments.
Wow, that's a great question. And you know it 100%. That's a yes. That's a 100% yes. The whole theft idea came from a true life experience. I had just gotten a 1953 Eugene Lehman violin my senior year of high school, and it was going to take me to college. It was going to be the instrument that I, you know, was starting my professional career on, and it was stolen. And when I tell you, to this day, it feels like there is a piece of me missing because I don't have that instrument anymore. It was mine. I paid for it. It's a fantastic instrument. I played better because of it. And someone took it. It's gone. It is, you know, I will probably never see it again, but I don't want to say never say never. You know, and the violin that I currently have, that's another one that I bought after I graduated from high school, and I played on it for 25 years, and I absolutely love it. It's like an extension of my body. You know, it really is. I know every curve, every nook, every battle scar that I put on that violin. I know it. And the one that I'm playing on right now, I'm playing in a 1753 something, I forget. It's a French maker, and it makes me sound incredible, and it is literally an extension of my body. Yes, 100%. I think that's true of most musicians, most serious musicians. Their instruments really is an extension of your body.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my own story with that, you know, I can't claim that I bought my instrument, but my dad surprised me for my Christmas, my 9th grade year. He and my mom made me wait for my last Christmas gift that I got to open, and I opened a professional buffet clarinet, which, as you know, top of the line.
Oh yeah.
I was so excited. I was like the most expensive thing at the time that I owned. You know, I just absolutely coveted it. And 2 days before I went to the prom, I was headed to a friend's house to go return one of the prom dresses that didn't fit. And I got to a light, and you know, I'm trying to be a good driver and everything like that. Someone's coming over the hill pretty fast. I grew up in Georgia, outside Atlanta, and so I'm like, okay, I got my left turn signal on. I'll wait for him to fly over the hill, and then I'll make my left turn. And the person behind me was going probably about 40, wasn't paying any attention, smacked the back of my
Oh my
car.
gosh.
And the cops come, and they're all concerned about me, and I'm crying hysterically. They think I've been seriously hurt. I've got whiplash. I'm crying because my trunk of my car is squished. I'm like, my clarinet's in there. You gotta get my clarinet out. I mean, like, they're like, oh my gosh.
It's
Not
like
worried
your
about the
baby.
progress I have
It's
to
your
return
baby.
a couple $100. Not worried about the car that's damaged. Not worried about myself who's shaking like a leaf. I'm upset because my clarinet is trapped in the trunk and they can't get it out of there. Like, oh my God. Yeah. So yeah,
I feel your pain. I do. I feel you.
Yeah. Or when I was at music camp at Brevard Music Camp between junior and senior year, and I'm playing and it's hot as blazes in the summer. We're having outdoor concerts. And one time the bell of my clarinet just fell off.
Oh,
And I was like,
wow.
oh my gosh. And then the guy next to me is like, yeah, don't worry. It's just your corks. I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, my corks had come off.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, what am I going to do? We're out in the middle of, we were in Brevard, North Carolina. I was like,
Yeah.
we're not anywhere near any place that can fix this. He goes, oh, but you can fix it. He goes, here. And he goes and grabs cork grease, which I had. I was like, okay. I was like, but there's no cork to put it on. And he goes, no, here's what you're going to do. And he got out dental floss. He starts wrapping dental floss and puts the cork grease on it, puts the clarinet back together. And that's how I played the rest of the summer.
Good as new.
Wherever that guy is, thank you. You saved me from having to drop out of music camp as a 17-year-old. So yeah, you have all these personal experiences, like you said, it's an extension of yourself, and you have good experiences and bad experiences. And I think my junior English teacher had us write a song of ourselves, like a la Walt Whitman, and I wrote it about being a clarinetist. So I'm geeking out with one of my favorite literary rock stars, you. But really, I'm telling you, when you work as a librarian and you get to interview authors, and then the author ends up being a fellow musician, it's just kind of like, you can't make this stuff up. It's just
I love it. I love it.
It's just too cool. So speaking of North Carolina, which I think is a completely amazing place, corks falling off put aside, we had one of our readers who wanted to know, is Markham University based on UNC Greensboro?
It is not. I did not want to use, well, actually, I take that back. The physical structure, the description of the physical structure is UNC Greensboro. I would see that music building, the old music building, every single day. I was there practicing 3.5 hours every day from freshman year to my senior year. So I know every nook and cranny of that building to perfectly. I know Beethoven, Bach, Brahms on the, it carved into the side of the building. So descriptively, it was definitely UNC Greensboro, but I didn't want to, name a school and, bias towards this school or that school for things that were happening well or things that didn't happen well. So I just made up Markham University, but it is definitely based description wise on UNC Greensboro.
I'm telling you, these readers do not miss a beat. Like when they decide to read a book, they don't just read the words on the page. They go on for like full on immersion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're
That's
probably
good stuff.
Googling your name on the internet and let me figure out who this Brendan Slocum is. I need to know all of his background and everything. I don't mean to make them sound like stalkers, because they're not, but they're very engaged with whatever it is that they read. So I know that the conversations we're going to have about your book are going to be really exciting, and they're just so pumped at the idea that they get to ask these personal questions, because usually you don't ever get to meet the person who wrote the book that you read and that you enjoyed. So that's a really neat thing. And unfortunately, our next question gets even a little bit more personal when they said, how closely does Ray resemble you? I mean, is Ray like basically you, or at what point does Brendan and then Ray begin? Oh, you have to drink the big glass of water. I don't blame you.
No, I can't answer that because there's water in my mouth. No, I, without being too conceited, I actually did base Ray's physical appearance on me. When I was Ray's age, I was as skinny as a rail. I was 130 pounds, soaking wet, with a book bag on my back and my violin case, super skinny. But and I wanted to use descriptions of him that people said, Brendan, when you were that age, you look like this, you did this, your hair was cut like this. Back when I had hair, I don't really have any now, but it's okay. It's my choice. I shave it. You looked like this. This is how you walk. This is how, and I based the description on other people's descriptions of me when I was Ray's age. So yeah, but I got muscles now, so it's okay.
There you go. And now they're going to have to find a star in Hollywood that's going to meet your expectations.
If I just
can't have them representing you, I mean Ray,
true
out there,
Very true. I just need a bottle of Just for Men, and I'm good to go. That's all it's going to take. And some oil of Olay, and I'm really good. Yeah.
You're gonna have to screen these guys carefully. Make sure that they make the cut. Absolutely. And then also they wanted to know, to go back to the book itself, did you always know who stole the violin and why they did it? Or was that something that kind of organically came in time to you?
Great question. I am a huge Agatha Christie fan. So I pulled an Agatha Christie. I wrote the entire story, the theft and everything took place. Then I went back and decided, it's going to be this person. I knew that there would be a theft. I had no idea who it was going to be. And originally, the original thief in the first couple of drafts is not who it ended up being in the last draft that I did. So yeah, I pulled in Agatha Christie.
Are we allowed to ask who the original thief was?
After everyone has read it, then you can ask me.
Okay.
Yeah,
so maybe when you go on the Star Tour for the movie, maybe then you can tell us.
Okay.
Now, of course, the book club's going to speculate who might this other culprit have been. And I thought that the mystery itself was really interesting because the book was about so much more than just who stole the violin.
Mhm.
That was kind of the catalyst to get into the bigger story, the bigger narrative I felt like you were trying to tell.
Yeah.
So it fit into my summer of suspense theme. But I think the book club will be relieved that no one actually got smothered this time. Because they were starting to really get concerned about me. They're like, Ian, you picked the maid and somebody got smothered. I'm not saying who.
Yep.
And then you picked the Christie affair and somebody got smothered. So it's like, is this the theme? I said, no.
No smothering in the Violin Conspiracy.
Breaking the pattern here. We're going in a different crime direction for this story. So I was glad that it wasn't always going to be the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that for the events that are in the story, was there, I know there was personal precedent for some things to happen. Was there any historical precedent for any of the events that happened? Things that you found that had happened to you or you knew about that had also happened to others?
The main historical aspects, the Tchaikovsky competition being a real thing. A lot of people ask me, say, is that real? I had to go and Google that, and I couldn't believe that that's actually a thing. Well, yeah, that's real. A lot of the talk of Pop when he was a slave, I did a lot of research into living conditions and everything and just treatment of slaves, because I really wanted that to be as authentic as possible as well, without it turning into this is a book about slavery. I absolutely did not want that. It's a book about perseverance, really, and just doing what you love. But for all of those sections, especially in chapter 33, which is Nora's letter, I really did some intense research, because the reason I did that is because growing up, at least when I was in school, we got America had slaves, Black people picked cotton, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, and that's it. There's so much more to it, and that's all I got. So I personally wanted to do a lot of research just to inform people, the conditions were so harsh and so terrible, and this is what people had to endure for years and years and years and years, just to give a sense of realism. So the historical aspects, especially in those slavery related topics, that was a lot of hardcore research done for that particular section.
No, and I think that is so important, because you're right, so much of it gets glossed over in school. I mean, it certainly was when I went to school. certainly glossed over in a way that simplified to an extent that I didn't feel like we were even really studying it. So I think there was probably a lot of balance that you had to have there of, I want to give an authentic viewpoint of what this is without it taking over the narrative.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a fine line. It was. And I actually had to tone that chapter down. I was told, hey, this is really good, but it's a bit much. Can we bring it down a little bit? Okay. So I compromised there, and I think it paid off. I think it was just the right amount.
Yeah, and I think it was really interesting, that idea about someone having a musical instrument, and obviously it meaning a great deal to them, meaning a great deal to their family, but then there's this other family who thinks they're entitled to that musical instrument, and then it becoming a thing where it kind of became its own drama in and of itself.
Yeah.
That I think probably that sort of thing has happened more often than not. This idea that, who does this item or this piece of history, who does that really belong to? And then how far away do you get from what it actually is to what it kind of gets coveted to be? So
exactly.
I thought that was a very interesting take on kind of connecting the past with the present, and how people are kind of perceiving the past, and based on their own perspective of the past, their own agenda for the past, kind of justifies their reasoning as to how the present should play out.
And I'm sure that was very eye-opening to a lot of people as well. They may have been thinking that way and not really known it, and their own biases. They get to see them on the page. Oh, wait a minute. Well, why wouldn't it be this way? Oh, wait a minute. That's probably not, and people get to see things from a different perspective that they normally would not have seen. And I'm so happy that, it came across that way. So yeah, that was deliberately done. I'm glad that it paid off.
Yeah, no, it absolutely did pay off, because I think it's so much easier to see mistakes when it's outside of yourself. When you're having to look right at yourself, you naturally, you just have blinders on.
Oh yeah.
But when you're seeing it kind of play out in the third person, and you're like, whoa, why on earth would you say that or do that or think you're entitled to that? And then it makes you pause, and then you think, wait a minute, have I ever had any of those thoughts?
Exactly.
Might I have jumped to that? Is there a situation where maybe I jumped to that conclusion, or maybe I haven't jumped to that conclusion? I want to make sure I don't jump to that conclusion. So I love that the really good books, the ones that really make you think, really force you to kind of expand your worldview. And even if you haven't lived that specific personal experience, you could at least think about, if I were in that personal experience, what should I do? What do these characters do? Do I agree? Do I not? Do I not agree?
It just makes you think.
Got some piece of the part that's right, and everybody's a little bit wrong too.
Just constantly thinking. It just you're always thinking. It makes you think. It's like, whoa. And because it could potentially happen, maybe it has potentially happened, like you mentioned. It's always making you think, and that's another added bonus to this. It's doing something, maybe intentionally, maybe unintentionally, but it's actually happening, and I think it's great, and I'm so happy that people received it well.
And I love that it's going to be on another medium, because sometimes people get into books in all sorts of different ways. People have perceptions about librarians that, you must read the book, no digital books, don't ever see the movie first and then read some. No, I think most librarians worth their salt are of the feeling of, however the book made it into your hands, however the story got to you, whether you read it, whether you listened to it, whether you saw the movie and then you went back and read the book, or you went to the book club and you cheated and you didn't read the book, but then you decided, wow, it sounded really interesting, now I'm going to go back and read the book. We don't have any judgment. We just want you to embrace the stories, however you got there. So, we're not looking over your shoulder trying to figure out exactly how you came to it. We're just glad that you did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I hope that maybe when the book comes out as a movie, that brings even more readers back to the original story, because they're like, wow, I really enjoyed, I'm just going to be hopeful, I really enjoyed this presentation on the big three, but I know there's more details in the book. I'm going to go back and read, and then we can say here in St. Johns County Library System, well, we knew him when he had only just heard his story was being made into a movie. So That's pretty cool to be in on the ground floor. I really might.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
We were talking about something else that had come up with some of the readers. We were talking about how you kind of got two different timelines going on. You're talking about the past, you're talking about the present. Did you write them separately, or did you write them together, or how did you bring the two timelines together so that they weren't, what's the expression that they use with history, that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes? What were you thinking when you had the two different timelines?
Originally it was going to be, everything was going to be in the past and then come right up to the point where things started happening. But I worked really closely with my agent, who was like, let's put this here, let's put this here. I probably switched around 6 chapters. It was just past, and then everything in the present. It made a lot more sense with the pacing to do the past storyline and then the present, and then kind of switch back and forth without it being too confusing. And there was a lot of editing that had to go into it. And, I had to rewrite entire chapters and just, see what made sense. And instead of putting this chapter here, I'm going to move it 3 chapters later. Oh, that makes a lot more sense. I got a lot of good feedback from my editors in that regard. And I don't want to say it was a gamble, but for me, it was a gamble because I've never tried to do anything like that before. And I think it worked.
I think it did, because you would get into one part of the storyline, and then you would jump back, and maybe something in the past would kind of inform the present, and then vice versa, something you read in the present kind of give you a different perspective on the past. And I think in order to understand these kind of warring families who are in this hot debate, you had to know about the past that they were referring to and the present that they were playing out.
Right.
I think one gave context to the other. So yes. I think it worked. I think it worked really well. But I know that both, I think Nina Dagermont did that in the Christie affair too, where she said, she was talking about one of the main characters' past, and then she was also writing the present storyline. She almost had to write them separately and then kind of piece them together and then find the connections to make it all flow. So it really is it's like a big jigsaw puzzle, I imagine. Where you're trying to fit the pieces together to get this whole cohesive narrative.
And all it takes is one aspect of like a past or present, just one aspect. Can't do that because this happened in the past, and here it says this. Oh, okay, I have to rewrite this whole thing, or maybe if I just move it here. So it really was a puzzle to put together. It was fun to do. It was kind of cool.
Social media has been wonderful and terrible for books, because on the one hand, people will analyze your book to death, and they will find every little single inconsistency, like, hey, on page 66 he said this, but by page 122 this person was doing this and they didn't do this over here.
I definitely got some of that, and I must say I'm really appreciative. It's going to help me to be better. When someone says, well, this happened here, and then you said this, and which is this supposed to be, and why did you do that? And I was like, I was completely unaware. I thought in the, as I was doing my edits, I thought that I caught everything, but I obviously didn't. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. I will be much more aware of that, in my future writing. So thank you. I don't take it, personally, I don't take it as an insult. I'm really happy that people are invested enough to be able to say, yeah, this is really good, except for this one thing. That's the one thing that I did not enjoy about it. And, I didn't write this book for me. I wrote it for fans. I wrote it for people to enjoy, and I want them to be able to enjoy it. And if that aspect is not 100%, I need to do better, and I'm going to.
Well, and that's such a candid and professional and considerate answer. On a bad day, my gut impulse might have been, well, I was writing different people's perspectives, and sometimes people aren't consistent themselves, but no, you came right at it, and just put it right out there.
That was
you can use that if you want to, because I'm sure there's any number of things people think that they have right here, and then it shows in the past that their recollection of things is not living up to the reality. So
I got
giving
that
you a little
advice.
rabbit hole you can jump down if you ever need one.
I got that advice from Chris Bojalian. He said that to me. I said, so what do you do? He's my idol. He's my idol, my absolute idol. And I said, what do you do when people, and I'm sure it doesn't happen often, but when people, find an inconsistency, what do you do? He said, I immediately apologize and I say, I'm going to do it better. And I'm like, whoa, okay. You know what? If you can do that, then I absolutely can do that. And you're way up here and I'm just a peon and I want to be like you when I grow up. And yeah, so yeah, it's great advice that I'm always going to follow.
Sometimes the people who are the crankiest critics, that's the nicest way I can put that. Sometimes that takes the wind right out of their sails, because if you admit to it right off the bat, then you've dropped the rope. You can't play tug of war with one person. So
Right.
then you can just be open to whatever the feedback is and just move on and
Yep.
and use it for your next book, which we're going to get to soon. I'm real excited about that. I know I keep squealing. I just can't help it. But as a clarinetist, I understand the world of professional clarinets and what a buffet clarinet means.
Mhm.
I want to understand better about the orchestra of string instruments, and tell us more about the Stradivarius. What is it about this violin that makes it just so completely the top of its game? What does it mean to you? And have you or do you ever want to own one yourself?
Wow. Okay, I'm glad I'm sitting down for that question. Do I want to own one? Actually, I do not want to own one because it just the pressure would just be, I already carry my instrument everywhere I go. If I go to the grocery store after a rehearsal, my violin is strapped to my back. I don't leave it in my car. It goes with me everywhere. I go to a hotel. Unlike Ray, mine goes with me if I go to the bathroom. It goes, I don't leave it. And it's an investment. It's a part of me. And I make sure that it's with me all the time. So with the Stradivarius, that would be worth millions of dollars. That would be too much pressure for me just to be able to, I wouldn't want to play it because I'd be afraid that I would damage it. So I would probably not play it as much, but I would love to play one at some point. Now with the Stradivarius violin, the funny thing about it is there are probably, I want to say that there are like maybe 400 in the world right now. There's a very limited number, maybe less than that actually, that are playable. And the age-old question, what makes a Stradivarius a Stradivarius? It's considered one of the best made instruments in the world. It's as close to perfect as can be. The only way, we may never know what makes a Stradivarius. You can test the varnish, you can test the wood, you can do the measurements, you can, whatever it is that you want to do to it, it's not going to make a difference unless you crack it open and examine it from the inside out. And there's no one who's willing to destroy a multi-million dollar instrument to do that. So we may never know.
And you're probably right. It is too much. It's just entirely too much pressure. Maybe it's just one of those things that if you had it, you'd feel like you'd had to have it under lock and key, like laser beams protecting it or something like that. Or because I recently reread Harry Potter, like have like a guard troll marching around it with a big club. It probably would be pretty anxiety producing, but
Oh, yeah.
I hope personally that you get a chance sometime in your life to play at Stradivarius. And that would be amazing.
From your mouth to God's ears. Yes.
That's right. That's right. You heard it here first. Heard it here first. You hit the big time, and maybe someone's going to just come out of the woodwork and say, I have this. It sits in like, a special display case or something in my multi-million-dollar home, but I don't actually know how to play it. Why don't you play it? So fingers crossed.
Yeah. I'm gonna cross everything, fingers, arms,
That's
toe,
right.
everything. It's all
I
good.
really hope that happens.
Oh yeah.
One of the questions that our readers had is they wanted to know if there are any similarities with your family to any of the family members that Ray has. I mean, I think that's kind of a dubious honor personally. I'm kind of hoping the answer is no, and you probably can't answer that because, they could be watching or see this at some point.
I can totally answer, and I will answer 100% honestly. First thing I'm going to say is mom in the book is not my mom. My mom would never actively try to keep me from pursuing music. My mom was as supportive as she could be, and it's the total antithesis of Ray's mom. It's not her, I promise. A lot of the names, Uncle Thurston is my actual uncle. I used his name. My grandma Nora was actually my maternal grandmother, and she is, I mean, as I was writing her dialogue, I could hear her over my shoulder just speaking, and I just wrote down the conversations that we had. And that she was a real person, and I could write a whole series on Grandma Nora because she was just the sweetest woman on the face of the planet. So I really wanted to pay tribute to her. The sibling, no one else is my real family, just my Uncle Thurston and his name. Just his name, and my Grandma Nora was actually real. Everyone else is totally fictional.
I have to admit, I'm a bit relieved about that. I'm not sure I'd wish those relatives on, except for Grandma Nora. She was one of a kind. And then I love it when authors do a tip of the hat to someone who's very beloved in their life, because what a wonderful way to honor someone than to immortalize them on the page and show through writing their character how much you appreciated and loved them. So
absolutely,
quite a tribute to Grandma Nora. Good for her. But I'm glad no other relatives were in any way biographical. I'm very glad.
Not at all. I promise.
One of our readers wanted to know if you think Ray will ever appear in any of your other books, or is he just a standalone character?
Great question. Initially, Ray was just a standalone, but I will never say never. I'm not going to say never. In the second book that I've written, and in my third book coming up, I'm doing a thing that I think is kind of fun. I'm making a reference to at least one or two characters from a previous book in the next one. So my next story, there's actually a mention of one of the main characters in the Violin Conspiracy, and it's in the very last chapter. And I'm going to, before the book comes out, I'm going to recommend that everyone reread the last chapter, and it will make a little bit more sense. Things will kind of come to light. And I won't say anything. All I'll just say is just reread the last chapter, and I'm going to do that with each of my books.
Oh, that's neat that they're going to get a shout out.
Yeah,
at least. So maybe it's kind of like the multiverse. They don't live in the same universe, but they're out there in another universe.
They're out there somewhere.
A very little well-known author that only a few people have read. I believe his name is Stephen King.
Oh, that guy,
is notorious for that, and that his other characters appear in some sort of shout outs or whatnot in his books. And he did pretty well in his writing career. So
I think so.
That's a good path to take. Now, is that second book, the Symphony of Secrets, the one comes out in April?
Symphony of Secrets, when it comes out, I'm not quite sure. When I turned in the final manuscript, my editor accepted it, and I was so happy, and he was really happy with the revisions that I did, and as was I. I put a lot of work into it, and he just gave me some of the most thoughtful revisions I never would have even imagined. Oh wow, that's great, I'm going to do that. He wants to get it published as soon as possible. Originally it was supposed to come out February of 23, but it may be pushed back to April or May. I'm not quite sure yet. Once we get the line edits and everything done, well, I'll know better when it will come out. But it is Symphony of Secrets. Yes, I'm excited about it.
Now, you said that there was a third book. There's another book I don't know about. Did you say that?
I'm probably getting ahead of my skis a little bit here, but see, Symphony of Secrets, once that one comes out, and it's a standalone story, and I absolutely love it. And I'll give you a brief synopsis of that in a minute, but I'm about to start my third book probably in September. My editor's given me the green light on the idea that I have, and I can say that it involves a cellist. And I will also say, without giving too much away, it's going to be a mystery thriller that involves hypnosis. I actually sat through a hypnosis seminar last week, and I'm like, okay, that authenticity is coming through. So I'm excited to start writing that, but I'm really excited for people to read Symphony of Secrets. You'll fall in love with the characters. You absolutely will.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because just as you couldn't quite commit to me as to when the book was coming out, I'm going to be equally mysterious and say that could be on my list of book lovers book club reads for next year. So if
Fair
you
enough.
find out a date, I would really like to know.
You got it.
We might read your second book and see what we think about it.
You got it. Absolutely.
Excited about that. Yeah, that's going to be great. Did you have a favorite part of this book that you wrote that you really enjoyed that just leapt off the page for you?
Oh, wow. Favorite. There's so many things that it was like reliving my past, the good and the bad. There were so many
Right.
things that I really liked. I can say that my favorite, well, I really like the section where Ray was doing a master class with Bryce, the young man Bryce. I really enjoyed that. And the most fun for me to write was the Boston chapter. And I want to say to anyone who lives in Boston, I have never had that experience in Boston, so don't feel bad. I did an interview once, and the interviewer was from Boston, and she said, "We are so sorry that I promise you it didn't happen. That was a totally fictional account of what happened in Boston, but it was a lot of fun to write." So that was my favorite section of the book to write, the Boston chapter.
Good to know. And since you told us about your next book, I've come to my final question of the evening, and is what do you most hope readers will take away from the story that you read, that you wrote so that we all got a chance to read?
Thank you. I would really like for people to take away from this book that whatever it is that you want to do it. Don't let anything stop you. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter your race. It doesn't matter your size. It doesn't matter if you have big feet. It doesn't matter if you have dark skin or light skin or blue eyes it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you want to do, if you are passionate about it, you go for it 100% and never, ever, ever give up. Never give up on what it is that you want to do, ever. And that's what I want people to take from it. The resilience that we all need to have, it's in all of us. It really is. We just need to light that fire to just keep it going. When times get tough, and they will, that's the thing that a lot of people don't really want to accept, that things are going to be difficult sometimes. You fight through it because you can get through it, and there's nothing that can stop you from doing what it is you want to do. Nothing. Had I given up, had I not had a mentor, had I not given, I almost gave up playing violin in college after a disastrous performance. And my teacher, Dr. Rochelle Vetter Huang, who I based Dr. Janice Stevens on, she was my motivation to pick it up again and do things differently. It's okay. We're going to learn from this bad experience, and we're going to make the next one better. She taught me not to give up. She taught me to always keep working for what it is that I want. And that would be what I want everyone to get from this, no matter what it is. If it's you want to be a hairstylist or you want to be a brain surgeon, if you want to do it, you do the work to do it. It can happen for you. I can't be a hairstylist because I don't have any, but yeah, hairstylist is probably not the best example, but yes, I just want everybody to just go for what you love. Do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I would have loved to have that been my final question, but I had a couple of other questions come in. So they're just not ready to let go of you yet. So on that thread of never give up, I'm going to never give up and ask two more questions, and then I'm going to finally cut myself off, because otherwise, I could just be here all night. And you probably have other things to do, like write these books, for example, or practice that violin, or maybe send that poster in the mail to the library.
Yeah, we're going to talk. I'm going to email you about that. Like, seriously, okay. I'll email you.
Fantastic. Someone wanted to know who are your favorite classical musicians, either to listen to or to perform?
Oh. Okay, how much time do we have? Because that's a loaded question. Really, I am as a violinist, I'm a huge fan. I have two favorite composers. I'm a Vivaldi fan, Baroque composer, Italian, the Red Priest. He had red hair and he was a priest, and he taught at a school for quote unquote illegitimate girls, and he wrote like 500 concertos for these young ladies to play, and they are not easy. They're really, really hard. And it's violin music, and I love Vivaldi, and I also love Dvorak, Antonín Dvorak, who is a Czech composer. His music is some of the most passionate music I've ever. You listen to it, you can feel the passion. He was a nationalist, he loved his country, and it comes through in his music. Playing it's so much fun to play, and so it just takes you to another place. Dvorak and Vivaldi, I absolutely love. I love everything by them.
Fantastic.
See, I'm
It's
getting
always
all,
good to, it's
ugh, I'm
always
listening
good
to this.
to
This gets me
know
excited.
other musicians enjoy. It's kind of like when you ask someone, my final question, which is, since you are not just a musician, you are an author. Do you have any other favorite authors or favorite books that you would like to recommend? Because what I'll do is I'll email you and I'll say, hey, what are those titles or authors? And I'll see if I can get them for our library.
Absolutely. I am a huge Colson Whitehead fan. I absolutely, he is fearless. He takes risks that, I'm like, whoa, I can't put that. No, I mean, he just, everything is just, it's just indescribably brutally honest, and I love that about his writing. I'm reading Nickel Boys right now, and it's I mean, wow, all I can say is wow. I recently read A Little Devil in America by Hanif Abdur Akib, and it's a book about Black culture. But being a Black man, I thought I knew everything about Black culture. Okay, Whitney Houston, Aretha Franklin, the Rolling Stones. There was stuff I would be reading a chapter and I would literally stop and Google what it is that he was talking about because I couldn't believe it. And these things come up, and it's just like Soul Train. I mean, just, A Little Devil in America, Hanif Abdur Akib. And this is one of my new favorite books, actually. This is an author out of, I believe he's in Arizona. This is Karma by Michael Alby. And it's the back of the book says, if you've received this book, it means that someone cares about you a whole awful lot. Mental health issues are skyrocketing, suicide, domestic violence, an undertow of infirmity. Life is too short, and it's a combination superhero story, what you need to do to make it better for yourself, and not being afraid to do that. And it's a fantastic book, and I highly recommend it. And and to the classics as well. I'm also rereading. I'm a big dork, I know, but I love the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and it's sitting right there on my bookshelf. And I reread. I think I reread it once a year just because I love it so much. Classics, Agatha Christie, anything Agatha Christie, I love it. Arthur Conan Doyle, Hound of the Baskervilles was one of the first mysteries I read cover to cover, and I, to this day, if I hear a dog howling, no, I'm not going outside. No. To this day, because of that book, I see one shoe sitting in the living room. Oh, no, something's going on in here. I'm not going to do it.
No, and the comic books. Let's not forget the comic book. There is no shame in the game.
None.
Again,
We don't have enough
that
time to
librarians
go
are
over this comic
snooty and you
stuff.
have to read just certain books. That is not true. Whatever inspires you, gets you to write, gets you to read, gets your imagination going.
Yeah, that's what it was
100%.
for me as a kid. As a comic, I read comic books as a kid, and there were words that I just didn't know, and I'm like, is this a real word or is this made up? And I would go to the dictionary. Back in the 20th century, I go to the dictionary and look it up. It's like, whoa, this is a real word. I'm going to use that word. And I actually got a lot of my early literary, just basics from comic books, and I highly recommend them to young people to start reading. Some of the writing in these comic books is fantastic, and I'm a dork that way, but that's okay.
Oh no, I can outdork you any day. You know where my extensive vocabulary comes from? One that I've actually been tested on and ranked really high, and my daughter now ranks really high on, which I guess she must have gotten from my gene pool. My parents got me a thesaurus when I was in 4th grade because my 4th grade teacher used to say she was tired of us using Walmart words. She wanted us to use Neiman Marcus words. And so I was like, what does that mean? And my mom said, Neiman Marcus is like the store. And Walmart is, well, Walmart. So they got me a thesaurus as a 4th grader. And believe it or not, I actually would read parts of this book because I was fascinated by all the synonyms and antonyms, and that outdorks you any day.
Maybe by that
comic
much.
books are way more full street cred than the thesaurus reading kid that I was in the 4th grade. Maybe I was destined to be a librarian, and you were destined to be a writer. So
can I just say, in terms of you being a librarian, I want to give a huge shout out to librarians everywhere. I used to go to the library every other Saturday with my family. We would all go together and get books, and it really started my love of reading and education in general. So you guys don't get enough credit, and I want to say thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. And we love having your book on our shelves. Although honestly, lately it has now been sitting on our shelves. It's been moving from reader to reader to reader. And we're excited about discussing it in August. And, I guess if you're just really bored and looking for something fun to do, you're welcome to join our Zoom book lovers book club meeting. Otherwise, we're going to eagerly look forward to that second book, Symphony of Secrets, coming out in 2023. And thank you so much for joining me tonight for our final conversations with honors, our grand bow, our superb finale.
I really
Great
appreciate
way to
it.
wrap up a summer of me getting to chat with authors and just try as much as I can not to like squeal and fangirl all over the place. So
well, I am in absolute great company. I'm going to write Nita and say, Nita, I got on the same panel as you. I can't believe it. We did our first panel together, 6 months ago, and just seeing how everything is happening it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. I'm so happy.
Well, if you or Nita or Nina want to help me do the next series of conversations with authors, give me a shout out to any authors you think might be interested in being interviewed, or maybe if you're interested in being interviewed for Symphony of Secrets, then just email me and let me know.
I will. I got a poster to do some talking with you about. Yes.
There you go. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. Well, thank you so much again, Brendan, for the wonderful book and for inspiring us as readers and getting us outside of our boxes and into the rather dramatic world of classical music. We really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great night and keep on reading, visiting that library and reading those comic books whenever you can.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.